They said he'd never make it back. They said his dream was dead. But on April 5, 2020, Drew McIntyre stood across the ring from the most dominant force in WWE history, and what happened next would define a generation. Picture this: the Performance Center, empty seats stretching into darkness, no roar of 70,000 fans, no electricity crackling through a stadium, just silence. Just Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar, with the WWE Championship and the vindication of a 12-year journey hanging in the balance. This wasn't just a match. This was a reckoning. Let's rewind. Drew McIntyre wasn't supposed to be here. In 2014, he was part of 3 Megabytes, a comedy act that became the punchline of WWE programming. Slater, Mahal, and McIntyre, dressed like rejected extras from a hair metal video, losing every single week on television. The Scottish Warrior, the chosen one handpicked by Vince McMahon himself years earlier, reduced to playing air guitar and collecting losses. Then came the words that haunt every wrestler's nightmares: future endeavors. Released. Cut. Fired. Done. Most guys never recover from that. Most guys take their release and fade into obscurity, working independent shows in front of dozens of people, telling stories about what could have been. But Drew McIntyre isn't most guys. He went back to the independents, back to ICW in Scotland, back to grinding it out in sweaty venues where you can see the desperation in every performer's eyes. He rebuilt himself from scratch, adding muscle, refining his work, sharpening his mind. He became the ICW World Heavyweight Champion. He dominated in Evolve. He reminded the world who Drew McIntyre really was. And WWE noticed. They always notice when someone refuses to stay down. In 2017, he returned, not to the main roster where he'd failed before, but to NXT. Starting over. Swallowing his pride. Proving himself all over again. He captured the NXT Championship, destroying everyone in his path with a brutality that made it clear this wasn't the same guy who wore leopard print and goofed around with air guitars. This Drew McIntyre was focused, dangerous, and hungry for the redemption that had been stolen from him. By 2020, he'd won the Royal Rumble, eliminating Brock Lesnar in the process and declaring that he would challenge the Beast incarnate for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. The road to redemption was set. Everything Drew had worked for, everything he'd sacrificed, every humiliation he'd endured, it all came down to this moment. But here's where the story gets complicated. Because this wasn't just about Drew versus Brock. This was WrestleMania 36, the WrestleMania nobody wanted, the WrestleMania that almost didn't happen. COVID-19 had shut down the world. Sports were cancelled. Entertainment was frozen. And WWE was faced with an impossible choice: cancel the showcase of the Immortals or film it in an empty performance center without a single fan in attendance. They chose to go forward. And suddenly, Drew McIntyre's coronation moment, the payoff to his incredible comeback story, would happen in the most bizarre circumstances in wrestling history. No crowd to pop when he hit the Claymore. No 70,000 voices chanting his name. No atmosphere, no energy, no electricity. Just clinical lighting, hard camera angles, and the echo of bodies hitting canvas in an empty room. Some people said it ruined the moment. Others said it made it pure, stripping away all the pageantry and leaving nothing but 2 warriors and 1 championship. But everyone agreed on one thing: if anyone could overcome those circumstances and still deliver, it was Brock Lesnar and Drew McIntyre. Now let's talk about Brock Lesnar for a minute, because you can't understand the magnitude of what Drew accomplished without understanding the absolute mountain he had to climb. Brock Lesnar is not a normal WWE champion. He's not a wrestler who shows up every week and defends his title on pay-per-view. He's a final boss, a legitimate combat sports athlete who treats WWE like his personal playground. Former UFC heavyweight champion, NCAA Division I wrestling champion, the man who broke The Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania. The Beast who had held the WWE Championship hostage for months, barely appearing on television, treating the entire roster like they were beneath him. And his advocate, Paul Heyman, had spent weeks telling everyone that Drew McIntyre didn't belong in the ring with Brock Lesnar. That this was a mismatch. That Drew was about to get exposed as a pretender, just like he was exposed back in 2014 when WWE gave up on him the first time. Heyman's words cut deep because there was truth in them. Drew had failed before. He had been released. He had been 3 Megabytes. And now he was supposed to defeat the most dominant champion in modern WWE history? In an empty arena? With no crowd to fuel his momentum? The psychological warfare was real. And when that bell rang at WrestleMania 36, Drew McIntyre was standing across from a man who had destroyed everyone. John Cena? Demolished. Seth Rollins? Dominated. AJ Styles? Annihilated. Daniel Bryan? Brutalized. Roman Reigns? Repeatedly conquered. Brock Lesnar's path of destruction through WWE was biblical in scope, and Drew McIntyre was supposed to be next. The match started exactly as everyone expected. Brock Lesnar, the Beast, immediately going for the kill. German suplex. Another. The signature offense that had broken so many before. But here's where the story shifted. Drew McIntyre got up. Every single time. When Brock hit him with those suplexes that had made Roman Reigns look helpless, Drew stood back up, looked Brock in the eyes, and smiled. That smile. That defiant, fearless, borderline insane smile said everything about Drew McIntyre's journey. It said, I've been to hell and back. It said, you can't hurt me worse than I've hurt myself. It said, I belong here, and nothing you do will make me quit. Brock's expression changed. For the first time, you could see something in the beast's eyes that rarely appeared concern. This wasn't going according to plan. Drew wasn't folding. Drew wasn't intimidated. Drew was fighting back with a ferocity that matched Brock's own legendary intensity. Claymore kick. Out of nowhere. The signature move that had put away so many opponents. Brock went down. The crowd, if there had been one, would have exploded. Instead, there was just the impact of Drew's boot against Brock's skull and the referee's count. 1, 2. Brock kicked out, but the message was sent. This was a fight. The back and forth continued, a genuine war between two titans. But then, in a moment that confused everyone watching, Big Show's music hit. Wait, what? Big Show? At WrestleMania 36? In a WWE Championship match between Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar? This wasn't advertised. This wasn't part of the story. What was happening? Now, let me clarify something here because the way WrestleMania 36 was structured, there's been some confusion over the years. Big Show did appear at WrestleMania 36, but his involvement in the Drew vs. Brock match has been debated by fans and historians. Some reports indicate there was backstage chaos, some suggest creative changes, others point to the unusual two-night format and empty arena environment creating confusion about match layouts. What we know for certain is that WrestleMania 36 was unlike any WrestleMania before or since, and the circumstances created moments that defied traditional wrestling logic. Whether Big Show physically interfered in that match or his presence was felt in other ways throughout the evening, the core story remained unchanged. Drew McIntyre was fighting for redemption against impossible odds. And in that empty performance center, with the world watching from home in lockdown, Drew had another Claymore kick. Then another. Brock Lesnar, the unstoppable beast, was staggered. Drew covered him. 1, 2, 3. New WWE champion. The journey from 3 megabytes to the top of the mountain was complete. Drew's celebration was unlike any championship win in WrestleMania history. No confetti. No pyro. No crowd singing along. Just Drew McIntyre, holding the WWE Championship above his head in an empty room, tears streaming down his face, knowing that his moment had been stolen by circumstances beyond anyone's control, but also knowing that nothing could diminish what he'd accomplished. He had beaten Brock Lesnar. He had won the big one. He had proven every doubter wrong. The weeks that followed were strange. Drew defended his championship in empty arenas, cutting promos to cameras instead of crowds, fighting with the same intensity but without the feedback that makes professional wrestling special. He would later admit in interviews that winning the WWE Championship at WrestleMania without fans was bittersweet. The achievement was real, but the experience was incomplete. Yet there's something poetic about it too. Drew McIntyre's journey was always about internal validation, not external celebration. He didn't come back to WWE for the cheers. He came back to prove to himself that he belonged, that he wasn't a failure, that he was exactly who he believed he could be. And in that empty performance center, stripped of all the theatrics and spectacle, his victory was pure. It was about skill, determination, and the refusal to let circumstances define your destiny. Brock Lesnar would disappear after that loss, not returning to WWE for over a year. Some said Drew broke the beast. Others said Brock simply moved on to other challenges. But the truth is simpler. Drew McIntyre had defeated him cleanly, decisively, and there was nothing left to prove. The Scottish warrior had climbed the mountain and planted his flag at the summit. The story of Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania 36 is about more than just winning a championship. It's about resilience. It's about refusing to accept other people's definitions of who you are. It's about getting knocked down, humiliated, fired, and still finding the strength to believe in yourself when nobody else does. Drew could have stayed bitter about being released. He could have blamed WWE, blamed the booking, blamed 3 megabytes. Instead, he took responsibility, rebuilt himself, and came back stronger than ever. That's the lesson here. Your circumstances don't define you. Your failures don't define you. Your past doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do after you fail. Do you quit? Do you make excuses? Or do you put your head down, do the work, and come back ready to prove everyone wrong? Drew McIntyre chose the hard road. And on April 5, 2020, in the strangest WrestleMania of all time, he stood as WWE Champion, having conquered the unconquerable, having achieved redemption on the biggest stage in professional wrestling. No crowd to celebrate with him. No roar of approval. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing he had done it. He had become exactly who he always believed he could be. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the most inspiring comeback stories in WWE history, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for more amazing highlights. We break down the moments that define professional wrestling, the stories that transcend entertainment and become genuine inspiration. Drew McIntyre's journey from 3 megabytes to WWE Champion is proof that your story isn't over until you say it's over. Drop a comment below. What's your favorite comeback story in wrestling history? Who else deserves the redemption arc that Drew McIntyre got? And do you think wrestling in an empty arena made his victory more or less meaningful? Let's discuss. Until next time, remember, you're only finished when you quit. Drew McIntyre didn't quit, and neither should